Good morning. It is Sunday, July 20th. Took a bit of a break this weekend. I didn't do any open houses. I just wanted to spend time doing some errands that I let pile up and spending time with my son. Right now, I'm going to take the dogs to a different dog park just so I can do a little bit of networking and get some work done in terms of lead generation. But I'm happy to report that on Thursday, we went under contract for the second time on my Tampa property in Ybor. And there's so much irony with that because I wasn't, really trying to force the issue with my clients. It's a VA loan, so they're really concerned because it's a 100-year-old home, 100-year-old property that they're going to be a lot of work that they're going to do. It's going to take them a lot out of pocket, etc. Me and the other agent came down on our fees to make the situation work for both the buyer and the seller. We were about $2,500 apart from where the final offer was, and the minimum that my seller wanted to accept. And she and I just decided to eat $1,250 each to make it work. At that price point, we're not going to notice it because obviously it's much less than what either agent is going to pay to their broker in terms of just the way the fee splits. So it is what it is. So we're happy to get that. And I'm actually happy that it's this agent because unlike the previous time we were under contract where the buyer missed the deadlines entirely for the deposit, within 8 hours. So we signed, I think, on Thursday night around like 7 or 8 p.m. The next morning when I was, informing my title company about it, I called them around 10 a.m. They said, "Oh, we've already heard from the agent. They've already sent us wire instructions for the deposit." I was like, "Okay, that's pretty good." Within 5 hours of that, on Friday afternoon, I got an email from their transaction coordinator asking questions about the property so I can start getting it ahead of time. So, this agent's on her ball. The irony I want to mention is that we're under contract. I've been trying to get my clients to accept an offer, and between 12 and 5 p.m., I was getting a bunch of calls saying, "Hey, my client wants to see your property." Or another agent said, "My client's doing a 1031 exchange and needs to close in 3 or 4 days, not go under contract, close, like fund an account." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're already under contract." And they were all coming in, and granted, where were they 3 days ago? Where were they 3 days earlier? It's one of those funny things where, like, when you call an agent on a property that's been sitting because you have questions for your client, and they say, "Oh, well, we received offers." That was me that day. Literally, every call that I've had, I've mentioned, "Oh, we're considering getting under contract with this offer." But by the time I hit, I accepted it, our clients accepted an offer. It was late last night. I didn't decide to put the situation on pending on the MLS. So I was getting a bunch of phone calls from people that are really interested. And who knows how interested or how serious they are once they see the property. But this client who we've said yes to has already seen the property. So, it's one of those funny situations where there's nothing you can do. You're under contract. I was talking to an agent friend of mine. He said, "Yeah, you're under contract. You can't do anything. You can't." I mean, we were obviously accepting backup offers, but those backup offers have to wait till the end of the inspection period. But it's kind of funny that, like, the moment I get under contract with a serious offer, we get tons of other offers that are serious that might even exceed this. And should we fall through, I can call those agents. But the urgency of, for example, a 1031 exchange, that might be gone for that client. So my goal is to all the eggs that I have in this basket for this transaction in Tampa, I'm going to really manage as well as I can to make sure we get across the finish line. On Monday, we have an inspection. The VA inspector will be on site, I think around 2:30 in the morning, 2:30 in the afternoon. The earnest money deposit is due, I believe, on Monday as well. I might be getting the dates wrong. I think the deposit's due on Monday, and then the inspector's coming on Tuesday. But it's already been scheduled. Things are going to be moving fast. However, the buyer is going to be out of the country from yesterday, Saturday onwards, until the 23rd of August. So we're going to be closing on the 25th. So the agent and I are trying to front load all the activities, make sure we get as much done during the inspection period as possible. And then once we have all that stuff done, I'm going to send an addendum to see if we can just shrink the inspection period, close it as soon as possible because it is kind of long. But it was I guess she was a better negotiator than I, because we spent so much time fighting over price that I think, to my discredit, I'd even negotiate the inspection period. It's longer than 10 days. It's not ridiculous, but it could have been shorter. Um, but yeah, so I'm excited that we're under contract. I'm excited that this agent seems to be on the ball, doing everything as effectively as could be done, and she's been a great communicator. The other property that I have under contract in St. Pete, we're dealing with an eviction, and that's gumming up the works because we were set to close on August 25th. We moved it back to September 25th, and we moved it back to August 4th, because of the process of this eviction. But I got a notification on Friday that once the individual tenant is gone, we're clear to close. They've completed their funding with their underwriters, which essentially means if the gentleman were to and his girlfriend were to leave tomorrow, and after we do the final walkthrough, we can close much earlier, even than the original closing date. So that's a bit of a headache. So I contacted the tenant after I contacted my client to let him know that, hey, good news and normal news. He said, well, what's the good news? I got in contact with our tenant, because the tenant's not been picking up the calls for me or the property manager or whatever. It's an eviction, so I get it. No one wants to hear the bad news. Okay, please get out. But I said, hey, I spoke to him. The tenant doesn't seem to really understand what eviction means, and he knows what eviction means. He doesn't realize that there's dates associated with it. He's asking if we can push it back to like mid-August or whatever, and that's technically not impossible, but it just means we'll kill the deal. And I told him I spoke to the property manager, and the earliest that they expect the sheriff to be notified from the court to have you vacate is around the 24th or the 25th of July, meaning if you leave beforehand, you can leave with all your property. When a sheriff comes, at least I've seen, I've never experienced it myself. Thank God I've never been evicted from a property, but I've watched a lot of eviction videos because of this in Florida, Pinellas County specifically, and it is not pleasant. The sheriff comes and you're required to leave within a reasonable time frame. The reasonable time frame is contextual, but it means specifically 30 to 40 minutes to get everything you can out. You oftentimes don't even get a chance to get a moving truck, because by the time the sheriff's there, your situation is over on that property because you have a signed order from a judge saying you must leave. So I was telling that to the tenant, like, look, I'm not trying to scare you. I'm not trying to force you out. I'm trying to help you. My seller has authorized me to say, hey, what do you need to move out by this date? Like, how much money do you need to get a moving truck? How much money do you need to get a storage unit? I was advising the tenant that a moving truck would be much less expensive than a storage unit because it solves two problems. Like, one, you can get a moving truck for a day or two or three or four a week, whatever it ends up being. But if you get a storage unit, which we're happy to, help you pay for, you still need to get your property there. So he's giving me a certain amount of money that I can throw it to the tenant to, give to the tenant. I'm not going to touch the money. I'm going to make sure that that's between the two of them through Venmo or Zelle or whatever. But he's giving me a budget. And I told the tenant, look, I know you want to stay longer. I know you have this and that reason, but have you found another place to live? They said yes. I said, then what's the holdup? Oh, we're waiting for these two things to be done on the new property, painting, etc. I'm like, all right, that's fine. However, I'm telling you from what I understand about this eviction process, before the 24th, you can take, your sweet time to get everything out. After the 24th, you're going to be given 30 to 40 minutes to get out. And the way the property is situated, he's in the back unit, the back of the duplex, which means the sheriff would basically put all the stuff from the back of the property to the front of the sidewalk. For context, that's about like 40 yards. And I said, I don't want any of your neighbors taking your stuff. Like, it's not an impossible expectation that the sheriff could come, force you and your family to be out, or if you're not home at the time, come with the locksmith, open the doors, and start putting your stuff on the street, on the sidewalk, and it's a free for all for your neighbors. Like it is not a pleasant experience to come home and to see all the stuff that you've spent hard earned money on gone. Like I don't want to see that happen to you. But also, you know, the seller's well within their rights to expect that to be done. Like you have to understand that this is their property. The rent that that they've expected from you hasn't arrived. Like just think about it if you were the landlord. Like so, I think that got him to understand the situation is not as calm and relaxing and can go at a pace that he's expecting. And I said, look, this isn't New York. If this was New York, you can literally fight this process for like 18 months. I've been in landlord tenant cases where, the landlord eventually wins, and it took, from like a high rise building. I remember this example, and the tenant left. It was like 19 months after some situation. And, there was a 19 months back pay or back rent expected. In Florida, it's a little different. It's kind of like Texas. It's kind of like Colorado. Like in the South, if you get a notice of eviction, you're SOL, you need to get out. So I told him, if you have a place to stay, great. If you don't have a place to put your stuff, get a moving truck. We can help you pay for it. And that moving truck could hold your stuff while you're waiting for your place to stay. But if the sheriff comes, you're basically forfeiting your access to all these other things, especially if they come while you're at work, if your family's not there. Or God forbid, you have a teenage child there by themselves and the sheriff's there, they're going to call you if you don't have a car. Like, think about this stuff. And I think he took it to heart. So I have another conversation with him later this afternoon on a Sunday. After I walk the dogs and run some errands with my son, JB, I'm going to give him a call and say, hey, so what are we going to do? Are we going to get you the money for a moving truck and then help you? Because if like I'm willing to help him, pack the stuff. I don't want to, but I'm willing to help. But I really want to avoid a situation where someone's thrown out of their home or their apartment in this context. It's unfortunate. And granted, like it's like this transaction is running somewhat smoothly. We're outside of that process, and the tenant's a nice guy. I don't suspect that he's the type to put a sledgehammer to the walls or destroy the property on his way out. But it is uncomfortable to have to go through this eviction process. He seems like a really nice guy. But yeah, so those are the two things going on. And in my other listing, it's kind of funny. We got an offer today's Sunday. We got an offer on Saturday morning, and the offer just seemed kind of sketchy, the way it was just written out. I looked it up. The agent's not actually registered or not licensed in Florida. He's licensed in another state. I think he just recently moved to Florida. But when I mentioned the agent in the process to my seller for my other listing, she said it sounds fishy, and I think she thinks that it's her daughter. There's family problems in this case, trying to buy the property out from under her because this family is just no one speaks to one another, and the seller has told me in that case, if her daughter came in with $1 million for a property listed for 425, she wouldn't sell it to her daughter. So I think her daughter found an agent that she can try to buy the property through a trust. But the daughter also doesn't have the money to buy the property because it was a seller financing deal structured for 30 years, meaning the buyer would pay the seller $2,100 a month for the next 30 years to buy a property. And mind you, my client is like 78 years old. So, she would say no to that out of hand because she doesn't expect to be alive to her 112th birthday. Sorry, not 112th, 103rd, 104th birthday. I'm not doing the math now. So she said no out of hand, but when she heard the agent's name, she says, that sounds familiar. I think that's a friend of my daughter's. So no. So yeah, it's a lot of drama. Like I haven't had a transaction where everything is clean. I've had a transaction where I got a listing. We ran it. I run through title right away just to get any lien searches stuff out of the way. Turns out the daughter owned the property. The daughter got the house out from under the mother during refinance. I had another listing where the father was selling the property, but the kids were fighting with each other because he wanted to create an inheritance for them. So yeah, it's weird. Like in Florida, like I hear other people having really smooth transactions, Mine seem to be cases where I can learn a lot about how the real estate process works, because there's always some sort of interesting complication. But at least for these two under contract, I'm becoming more and more optimistic that things are going to go well. They just have their own interesting hurdles that eventually I'll be able to write a book about. But yeah, Christian Abush, licensed realtor with Real Broker. Thank you for joining me, and I'll talk to you later. Bye.